We gotta get out of this quick.
What do you mean, dude? What do you mean? It's flooding?
There are few fates in this world that sound worse to me than being trapped in a tight cave passage, stuck upside down, and unable to move my arms and legs for hours on end while slowly losing my consciousness. Well, this is what happened to John Jones in Nutty Putty Cave in 2009. Jones had a wife, Emily, and together they had a son, and Emily was pregnant with their next child. People knew John as a loving person who was devout in his Mormon faith. He went caving often at a young age, but hadn't had much recent caving experience. On November 24, 2009, John Jones went to Nutty Putty Cave with one of his siblings, Josh. Their spelunking group had a total of 11 people, which should have ensured the safety of everyone in the group. But what happened to Jones was an issue which stretched beyond the number of people in the group. 4 people, including John and Josh, wanted to enter a tight passage in Nutty Putty named the Birth Canal. John was eager and confident and went first, but he went down the wrong passage, called Ed's Push, which only led to dead ends. John expected the path to open like the birth canal does, but the path only got tighter as he inched his way through the push. John ended up squeezing himself upside down into a crevice which was just 10 by 18 inches and practically vertical. John had one arm below his head and the other pinned between his body and the wall of the cave. His feet had little space between them and the cave ceiling, making him completely trapped. The tight space made it very difficult to breathe, as his chest was compressed by the cave walls. Over the course of a few hours, dozens of people came to try and retrieve Jones from his predicament. They set up a system of pulleys to try and pull Jones from his ankles. The system was having difficulties, like his feet would hit the low ceiling, causing his currently very sensitive nerves to shoot with pain. Since his legs hitting the ceiling was making it difficult for him to get out, they were considering breaking his legs so he could fit back through the hole he could barely even fit into. The team was able to pull him up enough for him to make eye contact with one of the rescuers, but the pulley system broke when a piece of stone which one of the key pulleys connected to broke, making John slide right back into the crevice. This was the final nail in the coffin for the rescue attempt. John's heart was struggling to properly circulate blood with his whole body upside down, since the body is meant to stand upright. Unfortunately, after 24 hours, John Jones was assessed by a medic who determined he was dead. They decided it was too dangerous to retrieve the body, so instead they closed the entrance of the cave using concrete, forever immortalizing John inside. The story of John Jones is a sad and scary one, reminding everyone of the dangers of exploring tight cave passages. It's probably the most famous example of a scary caving accident, but there's no shortage of stories of accidents in the underground. Caving is an interesting hobby because it's quite popular, but it can also be very dangerous and claustrophobic. It makes you ask why people would willingly put themselves at risk to be in a situation even seasoned cavers find themselves in. This was the case for spelunker Floyd Collins. Floyd Collins, born in Kentucky in 1887, was an avid caver since his younger years. He even found a cave beneath his father's farm called Crystal Cave. Given his love for caving, he knew exactly how to use his discovery. This is because in Kentucky in the early 1900s, there was a massive battle between property owners to use caves in the Mammoth Cave region to make money. This battle was named the Kentucky Cave Wars because of the fierce competition caused by the business. The war brought on legal battles between business owners and controversial marketing and soliciting strategies to attempt to get the upper hand over competition. One example of this is a man named George Morrison, who illegally entered Mammoth Cave to scout it out, purchased land nearby, and blew up the land to create a new accessible entrance to Mammoth Cave. It's said the 2 most important strategies for getting people into your cave were solicitors on the sides of roads to try and reel people in, and a more attainable entrance. Since Floyd Collins' Crystal Cave was a longer journey than other people's entrances, his business was not making much money. In 1925, in an attempt to find a better cave, he went to another landowner who owned Sand Cave and made an agreement to share the profits of the business with the owner. Floyd's exploration of the cave was filled with extremely tight passages that were very difficult fits for non-cavers. During his journey, his lamp began running out of fuel, so he tried to hurry up out of the cave. During a tight section of the cave, Collins accidentally knocked his lamp over, causing the cave to go completely dark. Now in this darkness, he had to try and calmly get his way out. He meant to use the cave wall to reposition himself, but this instead resulted in the tumbling of a rock which fell on his ankle and pinned it to the ground. Smaller rocks additionally fell around his leg as well. He was completely unable to move. After some time passed, his neighbors became suspicious and concerned by his extended disappearance. They got close enough to Collins to make contact with him and report the emergency. As the story developed, the media got a hold of it. The story was spread through the newspaper and a newer form of technology, the radio. By 1925, 5.5 million radios were being used in the US, so it was already quite popular and had become a huge media influence. The coverage of the incident led to tens of thousands of people gathering around the rescue site. Collins' neighbors and other vendors capitalized on the opportunity and sold food to the people gathering. Many people in the crowd had disagreements on how to go about saving Collins, which resulted in arguments and fights between people in the crowd. As concerned people gathered curiously, there were many efforts to save Collins. Initially, they tried using a harness and a rope to pull him out, but this only injured him in the process. Their next plan was to dig out each rock individually until he was free, but sections of the cave collapsed multiple times, making it too blocked off and dangerous to return through the mouth of the cave. On one of his trips to visit Collins, his friend Gerald could hear him crying, motivating Gerald to keep moving, but reminding him of how dire the situation was. They finally decided to dig a 55-foot deep shaft down to Collins. They anticipated finishing the shaft in 30 hours, but as they dug deeper, the harder it got to dig the shaft. In 30 hours, they were only able to dig 17 feet deep, not even halfway to Collins. When they finally reached him, it was too late. He was cold and unresponsive. They determined he had already been gone for up to 5 days. The story only gets more disturbingly interesting from here. After about 2 months, Collins' body was retrieved from the cave and buried on the Collins family farm. Floyd's father sold the property with the farm in Crystal Cave, and the man who bought it dug up Floyd's body and put it on display in Crystal Cave as an attraction. There was a failed theft attempt of the body in 1927, and then a successful one 2 years later. With the use of hounds, the body was found, but oddly with a missing leg. The Crystal Cave land was bought in 1961 by the Mammoth Cave National Park, and Collins was eventually buried at a cemetery in 1989. It's pretty interesting to me that Floyd Collins mistakenly made the cave much more famous than it ever would have been if he hadn't gotten stuck. His cave is still famous 100 years later, and millions of people still learn of his story today. Reading these stories partially destroy and restore my faith in humanity. On one hand, there was the gross manipulation of Collins' body for years, but on the other hand, seeing that hundreds of people are willing to put their time into helping just one person is very refreshing to see. The Nutty Putty rescue involved 137 people, and Floyd Collins had about 75 people actively trying to rescue him. And these rescue efforts even look small in comparison to another example, the 2014 Riesending Cave Incident, where a German spelunker Johann Westhauser was given brain damage from rockfall when he was about 4 miles from the entrance of the cave. The rescue mission to get him out involved 728 people and cost at least €1 million to complete. Westhauser survived and recovered in about 2 years, and begun caving again. The mission was so large that it took until 2020 to clean up the cave of all the trash left when rescuing Westhauser. These examples I've listed are only a small fraction of true caving stories and videos which exist online. There's also an old creepypasta named Ted the Caver, which was considered the first creepypasta. The story is about a man named Ted who explores a cave with his friend to try and explore a new section of it. To explore this cave, they have to fit through extremely tight passageways, so much so that it highly restricts their breathing when squeezing through. The further they go into the cave, the more red flags they encounter, like seeing strange drawings of glyphs on the walls and their dog being absolutely terrified to keep moving forward. And despite these signs, no matter what happens, they have something within them telling them to go back into the cave, and they do. Over and over again. The story is amazing because it uses what's scary about caving to its advantage. Having to fit through tight spaces to escape the danger they feel coming is so brilliant, all while having nobody to contact because they're deep within the ground. If you haven't listened to it, you really should. When I did a few years ago, I was literally in the fetal position in my bed at 2 a.m. because of how freaked out I was. Reading these stories and watching videos, I ask myself why people put themselves in these situations. Like, I saw a video of a man in a flooding cave with barely enough space above him to breathe, and he barely made it out. And I can get why spelunking would be fun. In fact, I would probably enjoy it myself, just not to this extent. I just don't think it's remotely worth the risk. But there are reasons many people do enjoy the more extreme side of this hobby. Some like the rush the danger gives them, some like how peaceful and separated from civilization they are when they're deep underground, some like a good challenge, some just love the scenery and the feeling of a cave, and some just like a good excuse to do something with their friends. A lot of the reason people go caving is the same reason people go skydiving. It's just a great thrill to a certain group of people which a lot of people wouldn't dare to do. And all the reasons most see not to go into a cave, they see as a reason to go into it. Alright, thank you for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed this video and want to see more on similar topics. Bye!